And I believe we're live.
We are live. Hello, everyone in the chat. Thank you for being here, you jokesters. We are live exactly on time every time, regardless of the time.
Mike.
Well, I can hear an echo now.
What happened?
I hear a very delayed echo.
On your end? I don't hear that. Sounds good on my end.
I'm not getting anything.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Do you have your stream open somewhere? And is it pitching back to you?
No, I don't think so. I do. Of course I do. There we go. That fixed it.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
All
I
right.
had a bunch of tabs open and I'm looking up. There it is. Sorry
There
about
you
that.
go.
Everyone.
Better with echo. Nice one.
Yeah. Better with echo. Thanks for
I'm showing the jokes. Sorry to say.
do it. Hey Uriah, thanks for stopping by. I'm sorry that I'm not only did I not join the no prep challenge, but I am now going to be over top of the no prep challenge. Deepest apologies. I will owe you now 2 games for this.
Oh.
Thank you everyone for showing up and letting us get through that particular technical difficulty / stupid move. Tonight I want to talk about fear, and I think I'm bringing the best 2 people on to do it with. Mike, who is a doctorate and clinical psychologist, Dean, who is an avid consumer of horror. Last time that you were on, we talked about cosmic horror, and so I really want to dive into this. And I was telling you this backstage. The reason I want to get into this topic is because someone said something I didn't like. So
It's good as motivator as any.
Yeah, right?
It's good to turn that emotion into something positive, right, Doc?
Yes. Yeah, let's do that. So I want to kind of lay the groundwork. There are obvious statements, right? You can't actually achieve fear at the table. And it's about, that particular emotion is about experiencing what the character is experiencing. That's a very 4D perspective. It's not necessarily about the player being fearful. It's about the character being fearful and then what that looks like and how they act it out. So it's not required that you be afraid to role play someone who is afraid. But I do want to get into the different definitions of threat response emotions. Not all of them are threat responses, but I'm kind of grouping them in that same category. And I want to do that because I think that the misunderstanding of what some of these terms mean really lends itself to poor advice with regard to role playing. So I think this might focus less on how to do it properly with 4D. And it's more, I think, just going to be a conversation about it's going to be hopefully correctly defining the terms and letting you know exactly what can and maybe cannot or definitely cannot be used at the table to motivate players. Because you're never going to, like Lord Mattius likes to say, you can't make your players afraid unless you keep a loaded gun on the table, right?
Yeah,
I agree with. So I think we'll start. Oh wait, Dean. First, let's introduce you with Gallows Humor Games because I think that, and Did I put that? I might have put that in the description. If I didn't, it'll get there. But please introduce yourself.
Sure,
Mike as well.
I'm Dean. I think most of the guys in the Discord know me. For those of you who don't, I have recently stumbled across this group of what Crispy's dubbed aggressive role players. And I've been doing film and television podcasting for over a decade now. And I've always been passionate about RPGs, TTRPGs. I called them RPGs back in the day. But I've always wanted to do content in that realm, which is leading me to explore it. And a bunch of these guys have been cool enough to ask me to be on, to talk to them. Bacon is routinely haranguing me in a good way to talk to him, which I like doing. So yeah, that's really what the channel is about. Gallows Humor Games used to be called LSG Media Games. I changed the name of it to sort of put a little bit of a distance between the two brands. And the gaming channel really, if you look at it now, it's just got a bunch of TT Sim and like card game stuff I was doing to my friends, which I left up there. But I'm trying to pivot it into some more role playing specific, be it actual plays, maybe game reviews, and of course discussions like this, which I love to do. And to put a quick pin on it, I found myself in the RPG Crusade Discord, and I had lots of things to say. So I was like, I got to just stop typing this shit and start talking about it, because I don't want to just type walls of text anymore, because it's lame. People check out and then dumb arguments start. So I just want to come on and like talk about it. You know what I mean? That's more my speed.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here. I don't really have a particular expertise other than I'm very passionate about the idea of horror. I do like running that style of game, at least pre 4D exposure. So I'm looking at how can I adjust that going into the future. And a conversation like this is very interesting to me, because the horror genre in film and in literature is very interesting to me. It's full of garbage, but there's a lot of gems in there too. So, but I'm really looking forward to some clinical definitions of what some of this stuff is, because I'm going to be like the feeling guy. Mike's going to be the guy who puts words to what I'm trying to like express. And I think together we can get through this, you know?
Yes. By our
Together
power.
we'll be one whole person. Yes.
You got it. We will form Voltron, a three-legged cat.
I like it.
Yes. And then Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself. And if there's any place on the internet that they can find you, then you can mention that as well.
I'm Mike. I mean, my reason I'm here is that my doctorate's in clinical psychology. You know, I don't really do YouTube or have a channel, but I'm on Discord at DMH Relic, so feel free to reach out to me there, and I'm always happy to talk.
Awesome. One technical question before we proceed. Is it standard operating procedure to just leave your eyes common up, or don't they fade away? Or I don't care, but
I think you have to click them in. I think it's StreamYard. You have to click them to
I re-click it and it goes. Oh,
Yeah,
there we
yeah.
go. Gotcha.
Or you can click
Okay.
the next one and it'll show up.
Gotcha.
Hey Gary, hey Jordan from Elder Goblin Games, BGD.
What's
I already
up,
said
guys?
hello to Uriah, Brian, Nicholas, Elf Hunter. That's you. You're here. I'm talking to you. That's also you. Hey Z, what's up? Hello everyone.
What's up, guys?
Thank you for being here. Apologies for being a little lax with the greetings. There's a little. I got thrown off from the technical difficulties.
And thank you, BGD, for the very nice compliment. That's very kind of you.
BGD is a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to start with fear. I'll just start at fear.
Okay.
Because that's what sort of prompted this whole thing. So fear is instinctive. It's an autonomic response to a perceived threat. It is immediate and specific, unlike dread, which we will get into later, which is lingering and nebulous. The APA, and this is courtesy of Mike, so thank you for providing this.
Sure.
The APA, which is what, the American Psychology Association?
Psychological Association.
Okay. So the APA says, a basic, intense emotion aroused by the detection of imminent threat involving an immediate alarm reaction that mobilizes the organism by triggering a set of physiological changes. Sorry about that. Fear differs from anxiety in that the former, fear, is considered an appropriate short-term response to a present, clearly identifiable threat, whereas the latter, anxiety, is a future-oriented, long-term response focused on a diffuse threat. Fear is it's physiological because it is governed by the amygdala. And so in order to truly engage true fear, your brain has to perceive some form of threat to your physical self.
Yeah.
There is no imagined threat that can provoke fear. Period, full stop, at least in the reading that I have done. And Mike, I would rely on you to correct me. But insofar as I am aware, you cannot provoke a fear response in someone through an imagined scenario. And so for that reason, you can't really get to fear at the table. It's a virtual impossibility, short from, again, putting a loaded gun on the table.
All right, let's wrap it up, guys. We're out of here.
Yeah, that's it. See you later. We're gone.
We
All
solved
right.
it. Let's go. So you're telling me to bring a 45 to the game and put it on the table?
Something like that. Yeah, or or a caged bear that you plan to unleash in the room. That'll cause people to fear.
I think there's one situation that needs to be cleared up. Whereas,
okay, go for it.
If you encountered fear stimulus prior, which is trauma stimulus, then it's entirely possible to experience a stimulus that triggers a fear response despite not being in the presence of something that actually is fear-inducing.
Okay.
So PTSD is a great example of this,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Someone who experienced a trauma response once and has associated to gunshots or to what have you, they might hear a car backfire, immediately have a fear response, and their PTSD kicks in, and that in its initial heightened acute state could qualify as a fear response, even though it's because it's they haven't distinguished the difference between the car backfire stimulus and the gunshot stimulus. Now, both of those, in that context, the person takes the car backfiring as an actual stimulus of a gunshot, and so in that way, there's a present danger, but it's more of an imagined present danger based on the lack of distinction than it would be a actual danger because there's no one actually shooting.
But it's still reliant on external stimulus. So it's not.
It's still reliant on an external stimulus.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is some form of sensory perception that would trigger that particular response.
Yeah. I mean, there can be internal responses to external stimulus that you don't observe. So someone could have a smell of a cologne of their attacker or something, and that can trigger a whole world of events occurring within their mind that aren't apparently observable. But
Right.
But yes, the answer is it still requires a stimulus of some sort that is related to the trauma.
Okay.
So
in the context of the role-playing game, that is not likely to happen.
Not likely to happen.
Provided you are in a basement or at a kitchen table or wherever you happen to be. That there's no shot of smelling. Let's remove that from the equation. You are not going to smell a perfume. You're not going to hear a car backfiring. So there's no external stimulus to provoke that.
The pedantic, academic in me felt the need to put that out there.
Gotcha.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but isn't this all like a cognitive appraisal too? Like the amygdala is immediate, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. And then is it the hippocampus who goes safe, not safe?
No, that would be the medial prefrontal cortex that is appraising it. So basically what happens is your hippocampus would be where the fear memories are going to be held.
I see. Okay.
And then there's a bunch of like circuitry that governs the various switches and things that I'm not getting into.
Right.
They're not that interesting. But the amygdala would be the initiator of the fear response.
Right.
And then it, and then add to that hippocampic memories. So hippocampus has the fear memories that might contribute to this or be stored there. And then of course your medial prefrontal cortex, which does a lot of things, but one of the things it does is appraise the stimulus and indicate whether or not there's an actual threat and the scope of the threat, even for things like stress or anxiety.
This is probably why jump scares are so effective, because it's an immediate response from your amygdala. Even though you're in I don't want to go ahead in the conversation, but even though you are in a safe environment, it still will cause a stress reaction, so to speak.
Right, because what you're experiencing in that moment of jump scare, right, is an immediate threat that's sudden and unexpected. And so what happens is that amygdala fires, and then then you react, and then the medial prefrontal cortex takes over,
It's
and then
movie
you're like,
theater,
oh wait, this
house, lights.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the initial response is, and please correct me if I'm incorrect. Obviously, correct me if I'm incorrect. Correct me if I misspeak. But I think based on these definitions that you have provided here, that would be a fright response. So fright, according to the APA again, is the emotional reaction that arises in the face of a dangerous or potentially dangerous situation or encounter. So it doesn't have to be a clear danger. It can just be potentially dangerous. Fright differs from fear in that the danger is usually immediate, physical, concrete, and overwhelming. So that would be a fright response, which then I think I'm going to call it your rational brain, because you can be the terms guy for the night, Mike. But then your rational brain takes over, and you can assess a situation and say, this is a rational thing. I should be fearful. Let me get the hell out of here, or fight, or whatever the response is. Or this is irrational. You drop the fright response and you don't transition into a fear response because there's nothing there. Is that correct? Maybe?
That sounds accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's
So
part of the fun. That's part of the fun of horror, but it would seem, is that come down, that relief of knowing you're not in danger. The initial shock of danger is like the adrenaline push, and then the realizing you're safe is part of that. It's part of the juice of why people like it.
I would argue potentially, maybe not to the fullest degree, but you can likely elicit a fright response in players at the table through the description of things that are happening suddenly that may endanger their characters that they didn't expect. So you can kind of sort of get there. So fright could be a tool in the toolbox in order to allow that particular emotion to unfold. If not, again, you're not trying to really scare your players. You're trying to scare the characters. Right. It's a completely different, separate thing. However, the intensity, the immersion can be ratcheted up. So we love to talk about immersion here.
Sure.
Or if you're able to sort of blur a line a little bit. I think fright particularly would allow you to do that. So Brian, thank you for being here, says, first of all, thank you for being here and being so patient with me on the metagaming video. This is about the 75th time I've mentioned it. Still haven't uploaded it. Still haven't even recorded it. So I know you're waiting patiently for that. This ended up happening this week. So someone said something I didn't like, so here we are. Apologies for that, but thank you for your patience. So he says, not even if so this I think has to do with the external stimulus for the previous trauma. So not even if associated with a similar imagined situation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe what you're getting at is that if it is someone who suffers from PTSD and ends up imagining the threat based on a car backfiring, is it possible to elicit that similar response in an imagined situation that is it's imagined gunfire in the shared imagined space of the game? Or is that a no?
Okay, so if someone has PTSD and they're playing a role-playing game, is that what I'm taking this to be?
I believe so. Yeah. Well, he just confirmed in chat. Yeah. So I described that correctly. So yeah, they suffer from PTSD. They are exposed to a similar type of gunfire situation imagined.
The source of their trauma.
Right. Yeah.
So the answer is that let's assume the worst case scenario here. We have untreated PTSD where the person has no resources for coping and hasn't learned any. Let's make it the worst possible case. Under that circumstance, what we have is a situation where a stimulus in the game, especially if we're immersed in the game, can trigger a cascade of anxious responses, maybe getting to a fright level, probably not getting to the same fear level as like hearing a backfiring car where there seems to be a threat front and center, right? So it would be, you'd have a series of severe heightened anxiety responses and a severe case of a variety of symptoms of PTSD that would concur with it. So, sure, an imagined situation in that context, in the worst case scenario, could be the case, but it's not the case that it generally would get to the fear response by itself, because that requires sort of a level beyond just the stimulus of the game could provide.
It
And it
requires
has-
a kind of a perceived physicality.
I was just going to
Correct.
say that. Yeah. Yeah. It has to, there has to be and is it even perceived, right? Isn't that the point?
Well, it's perceived in the sense that it's appraised as being a threat
In
And-
the immediate.
in the immediate moment. Yeah.
Right.
And so the person has an extended, this is where we get heightened startle responses and heightened alertness and, low-lying paranoia and things like this. But this is not a stream on PTSD, so I don't want to capitalize on that.
Of course.
No
Yeah.
worries, no worries. So from there, pardon me, and I guess we're kind of moving rapidly. If anyone in the chat has any questions, obviously, please toss them out there. I'm very happy to get to them in turn. But you, Mike, just mentioned anxiety.
Mhm.
And this is another one that's defined by the APA. Anxiety is an emotion characterized by apprehension and somatic symptoms of tension in which an individual anticipates impending danger, catastrophe, or misfortune. And you know what? Because I'm dumb and didn't actually go and look this one up. We're going to pair this with dread, which I have as it's an anticipatory anxiousness. It's disquiet in the face of something expected but not yet present. And the difference is that anxiety is diffuse. Anxiety can be a general feeling that you have about the future.
Right.
Dread is usually specific. I am dreading the test tomorrow morning. I am dreading having to drive 65 miles to wherever I'm going. Like, dread is usually associated with something specific. And these, before we get into it really, these are two things, again, that you can attempt to simulate at the table. You can attempt to simulate anxiety, probably a little less than dread, because you can name something specific and you can put a timer on it, you can put a clock on it, however you want to handle the situation, but you can absolutely facilitate that sort of threat response at the table.
Hey, just clicking around on YouTube, I see a lot of anxiety at tables. I'm just
I'm
gonna
sure.
throw it out there. Just regular, free floating. So
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Hamburger Hill. If you have to take Hamburger Hill, that's a sense of dread. That's a thing you have to do.
Yes,
And
that
there's
is a
peril,
specific.
and danger, and death await. And
Yes, and neither of those need necessarily give way to fright or fear. They can, but they don't need to.
And anxiety exists on a continuum. I mean, if you have acute anxiety response, for example, like in a phobia, if you're a fear of spiders or something, then we call that specific panic disorder, right?
yeah,
And so there's a continuum of anxiety. Right? Dread would be, is there a spider in the movie theater? Right? Anxiety would be more along the lines of, when I'm going to see this next spider that I have. And then panic attack or panic disorder is, there's a spider, holy heck, I'm out of here,
yeah.
Yes. Let's see what BGD just said.
I gotcha.
If you don't mind bringing that up. So, understanding that many people have traumas and triggers, I worry that layer may be complicating your exploration of the proposed question to be resolved. So, can people without trauma experience RPG fear? No. Because fear, it requires it's I think completely governed by the amygdala or amygdala, however you want to say it, and it requires the perception of an actual threat in order to engage. So if you're at the table, you cannot experience fear. You can potentially experience anxiety. you can potentially experience dread. And we'll get into some of these others as we go.
Because
so fear's out.
right.
Fright is possibly in, probably maybe halfway, kind of, sort of. Anxiety is in. Dread is in.
And I think you've already done this, Bacon, but just to simplify fear, it's just a perceived immediate threat to you. That's why you're not going to really face that at a role-playing game table.
Right, because
unless
if you
a GM
sitting,
throws a punch at you, then...
Right, right. If you're sitting comfortably on a couch around a coffee table and you've got your drink and you're having this game with friends, even if you are role-playing 4D and as immersed as you can possibly be in the character frame, because you are perpetually aware of the primary frame, you will never evoke a fear response in that situation, because there's literally nothing to fear.
So that's when you get into discussions like, okay, have you ever played in a TTRPG where you went, that was a scary session? That's when you get into like, what do these words mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've never really heard anyone say, I was so fearful playing Call of Cthulhu last night. I've never, no one, I don't know anyone who's ever said that, but I've heard them say, oh, it was such a creepy game. It was really cool, or it was scary, or, oh, it was, yeah. I've heard those terms used, but I've never heard anyone say fear. Fear, unless they're using it as a mechanic because their character failed a check and were then afraid of something.
Yeah, I agree with you. And not only that, but I think the opposite is true, or rather, maybe not the opposite, but the reverse, is that usually when you come out of a game like that, even if the GM is able to impress some measure of duress in urgency or discomfort in, I'll say, non-optimal decision making because of how they're really pressing you to make a decision in character. Those situations are very typically translated as fun and exciting and some positive emotion. So it's not even that people would really describe them as fearful. It's that they would probably more likely describe them as fun. So, and yeah, Brian gets it. He says, player frame makes it nigh impossible to get to fear.
For sure.
Pardon me, player frame. Space Roadie, if you have traumas and triggers that make you worry about people talking around a table, you're not mature enough to play games. Get out of my games.
I would suggest that person just needs some treatment, maybe. Maturity being aside, but I understand where he's going for.
Yeah, I do too.
Me too.
Yes, it is a matter of treatment, and I have said this before in other videos on the channel, especially the safety tools video, which I titled "Safety Tools Suck." Playing a game around the table with friends is not treatment. It is not treatment. No. It should not be treated as treatment. You should not have the expectation of receiving treatment at that table. No one at the table wants to deal with that sort of responsibility, I'm sure. And you, if you are experiencing these things, deserves probably a more professional, critical level of treatment than any role player is able to capably give, with the exception of Mike, because he's got a side D.
Yeah, but that would not be the proper setting for it.
No, not at all.
That would not be the proper setting. Okay, EGD, this is a great question.
This is a great question.
The answer is, in my view, flatly no. Fear is not really the goal, and it shouldn't be, because you can't get there. And that's kind of what. Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Which begs the question: what is in fact the goal?
Oh, I was going to say that I think fear isn't the goal, but anxiety, dread, maybe fright would be the goals.
Yes. So,
but I'm sorry, I cut you off, Dean. Go ahead.
No, by all means. So that's my point, right? So we're in getting to the terms and trying to understand what they mean. If we're talking about fear strictly as a fight or flight response, then clearly that's not the goal at the table. That sounds like a terrible way to spend your time if you don't have to. Unless you want to do that, then by all means, go skydiving or something. I don't know. But I think then it becomes, what is the goal at the table? And even that question can get a little bit meta cutesy wootsy with the 4D diehards. That, like, what are you trying to push on me? So it's like, that's where the meat is of this for me is if I want to run a game of Alien by Free League Press and I want to invoke a certain sense of atmosphere and dread as my part as the GM and establishing in session 0 that that's also what the players want, I think it's interesting to discuss how do we get there.
Well, I think that's a really solid ask because that's kind of where we want to drive towards. So what is the goal? The goal is not player fear. The goal is never player fear.
God,
you
no.
cannot make your players fear. Don't try it. The goal is character fear, which is, as Brian says, when he says, Space Race, when we say horror games, we mean the same thing as horror movies. Covers a gamut from torture porn to gothic romance. Reasonable,
Agreed.
I think. But I also think that maybe we could probably be a little bit more specific in the vocabulary, or at least if we don't call it those things, to understand them. So kind of we know what we're doing and how to get there. So I'm not proposing that we stop calling horror movies, or that we stop calling horror games.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is that in our effort to understand the way those unfold, let's maybe use the correct vocabulary. Where is it? So stochastic agency down toward the bottom says a goal to role play fear and do it well. Yes. I would suggest that this is part of the goal, right?
Yeah.
So if the goal is a horror game, then it is going to be incumbent on the players to role play fear well. It's not about being afraid. It's about communicating the fear your characters have in the moment through describing their actions and speaking and being in character. Now, I also think that the 4D style, with its intense focus on character immersion and the reduction of roll distance, will give you a leg up in this regard, because if you're able to achieve things such as anxiety, dread, and fright, then it will allow you more easily to convey those actions or the fear emotion within the game itself. So you're kind of aiming at sort of kind of a pseudo fear, right? It's going to be this rotational effort of anxiety, dread, fright, probably a little horror, and maybe a little bit of terror, but we haven't gotten to those yet. We will in a moment. But so if we rotate through these, say again?
I concur. I think I don't think you. It's funny because if in thinking of these definitions as we're getting to them, I don't think fear. I think I'm not, because fear is so hard to. I don't know. Fear strikes me as more difficult to, because you can't really achieve fear at the table. Then I'm not even sure I care how much the character. Let me think about this. Do I really care if the player is making his character act fearful if it's hard to even make fear work at the table? I don't know. I guess it's like anything in an RPG, right? The player is playing what they believe the character would be experiencing, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's, fear. I guess for me, I care less about fear, more about, I think I'm more of I tend towards more of like the dread and the anxiety. That stuff is more interesting when you're sitting in the GM's chair anyway, I think, than like worrying too much about fear. I'm just working this out in my head now, so pardon my pontification. But yeah, there's a good question here. What would the term?
Yeah, hello, thank you for coming. Also, Grognard Guy, Space Roadie, we've already answered a question of yours, so thank you for being here. Kingmaker, thank you for showing up.
What's up, buddy?
Wade Crow, pardon me, thank you. Everyone who's here, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. So the question is, what would the term be for extended invested interest? If you don't want your character's situation to suffer whatever a threat may be, would that be anxiety? I'm stepping away from that one. I don't have an answer. I think that might be a Mike question, not to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to parse it. So the extended invested interest is a different context than the rest of the question. If you don't want your character's situation to suffer whatever a threat may be, would that be anxiety? So if you know of the threat that you don't want to suffer, then that would be dread, as Bacon has defined it. If you are unsure of the threat, but you know there's something lurking out there potentially, that would be anxiety.
I like both.
Yeah.
I want to see both if we're playing in the horror genre, right?
And I think that's the other thing. There's overlap here because, if you're experiencing dread, you probably are. You're definitely experiencing an anxiety related to that dread. So it's not like there's a complete distinguishing. Like there's a little bit of overlap in the Euler diagram, is what I'm getting at.
Gotcha. Thank you for fielding that. I appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Let's see what else we have here.
There's a few. Canticle of Restlessness again.
Well, in the meantime, while if you are going to look through the comments, I am going to get to horror.
Nice.
Horror, specifically, now this is not something that is defined by the APA that I was able to find. And I think that that's because it is largely cultural. So while anxiety, dread, fright, and fear are psychological, horror is cultural, and it does not require an imminent threat to yourself, and it does not require a fear response. So horror specifically is it's revulsion or shock when confronted with something grotesque, unnatural, or incomprehensible. This, like fear, is specific, but it's about recognition of a deep wrongness without the need for a threat. So, for example,
okay,
and this is the example that I used backstage. You can see a photograph in a newspaper of a mass grave and experience horror. That is horrifying because there is a cultural wrongness about that, at least in the way that we probably all grew up. I don't know what country everyone's from, but I'll say that, Western cultures are typically repulsed and they revile that sort of thing because of its wrongness. So that is horror. And that is very achievable with descriptions within a role-playing game. You can absolutely describe horrifying circumstances and situations. You can describe horrifying behaviors when people's backs arch over and their limbs bend the wrong way and they skitter up a ceiling. That is horror-evoking. So that is very much something that you can rely on with your descriptions within a game. And I think you should, because
another way I've heard horror described that I really liked is the rejection of what your senses are trying to tell you, because it does not compute, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. There is.
Hence, like the head upside down on Reagan. Is that, or the crab walk? That's a horrifying moment in cinema. I think of that one all the time because she shouldn't be able to move her body that way, right?
Yes. Yes. Body horror in particular, I find very effective for me. But there are other things that you can use to, like there was, I was in this past Easter around, a friend, Ben, ran us through a Aliens game.
Hell yeah.
But it wasn't just aliens. We had arrived on the planet to deal with the aliens, but we ended up encountering a blood cult. And so the whole time I was failing my rolls and I was getting these whispers in my mind. And so eventually I role played giving into it. And I started to hack my own limbs off in front of the other players. Horrifying, absolutely horrifying.
Of course.
Incredible session. So, it's not just incumbent upon the GM; it's incumbent upon the players to react to what's going on in the world,
right.
and to act, to make your decisions and act within the world. I think that horror games are aptly named because it is this specific thing that you can focus on to really kind of get there, and it has nothing to do with fear, really. It can, but it frequently has nothing to do with fear. I didn't mean to talk over you, Dean. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just thinking of trying to use layman's terms to describe it. So, woman alone in her house, hears a noise outside, anxiety. She finds a flashlight, looks around, sees a masked intruder on the deck. That would be an immediate fear response. Right? Stop me if I'm wrong, Mike. She runs away. Now she's trying to hide in the house, and she knows he's out there. That's dread.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm just trying to parse them together as to how they would occur even in one encounter. Right? That's all. You're sitting there, you're having a good time, you hear something, then you hear something again, now you're anxious because it's unknown.
We can even get to horror with that example too.
If here's the horror.
In the closet and her husband and 2 children are butchered laying there waiting for her. That's a horror response.
How about this? The closet gets ripped open and the knife wielder is in fact her husband. That's horror.
Oh, yes. Yep. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. This poor woman, I feel bad for her.
Don't let me run games for you guys.
I'll let you run horror games for me.
Or could it be then you read about the slaying of this woman in the newspaper? That's kind of a horror contextually. When you're using the example of culture, you read about, oh, this is horrible. What happened to this girl?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What you just said, so to speak.
Yeah. In fact, I would say probably the most, like a real world example can be reading about something like that in the paper. There's a wrongness to humans murdering other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Whatever the context. That's typically a horror response.
Yeah. It's suboptimal for the continuation of the species. There's a lot of stuff going on in chat that's very difficult to keep up with. So let me just say thank you to everyone.
Let's take a minute and get caught up. Let's find them.
Yeah. Well, you want me just to start clicking through?
Whatever.
Let's start this one. Perhaps the key to making. Oh, you couldn't read this, Bacon. That's all you're.
I don't have to read it. Well, okay, I'll read it. Perhaps the key to making the most of horror games where horror elements, all psychological reactions desirable. Wait, let me start this over. Perhaps the key to making the most of horror games/elements, all psychological reactions desirable in immersive horror games would be to work through that attachment to the well-being of the character.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I would say that if you're role-playing a character and you're role-playing basic, most people are going to strive to stay alive as a general rule. And if you're role-playing that character and you're wanting and so you're role-playing it as a character who wants to stay alive, right? Then, of course, the attachment to that idea that one of my motivations is to stay alive, I think can go some way in helping with the immersion and the experience of, horror and terror and dread and anxiety.
That's a really good point. And you know what I was thinking, just as you're saying that, Mike, in every role-playing game, presumably, ostensibly, I may even say, you don't want your character to die, and it doesn't have to be horror.
Right.
The genre does not have to be horror. You don't want your character to die. Right. So when your character's life is threatened, you could argue the character is experiencing fear, which of course we have already discussed that the player does not. Right. The player may have anxiety about losing their level 14 character of 5 years, but that's a different thing, or maybe that would be dread in that case. But but I think that's one of the most interesting things about this is that when it comes to the table, a lot of people, and we know, especially with a lot of the in-character 4D guys, character death is almost celebrated as a how did you role play your death? Was it cool? But there is that part of it where that is just the reality. We don't want our characters to die, generally speaking. That's why we fight. That's why we roll dice. That's why we're trying to keep them alive with combat. But so my point in saying this is that that's why I think when you run a horror game, it needs something more than the threat of character death to be effective.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
I think in a horror game, death is like, I don't know, of all the things that would inspire anxiety or horror or fright, death is not very high in the list. I think there's other
Right.
more evocative things that would
Yeah,
be
I
capable of
completely
doing that.
agree. And I can even cite myself as an example, which I know is just anecdotal, but I have played in my past quite a lot of Call of Cthulhu. I have cited it several times as my favorite role-playing game of all time. BRP is great, really love it.
Awesome.
And it's definitely had an impact on my perspective going into any game. I will expect to die. I will expect to be driven mad when I go and play a game. Those aren't the things that I'm worried about. Now, I'm not going to force it. I want it to be a legitimate death, which is why, as you say, I will fight. I will struggle
course.
against the dying of the light, because that's
If not,
real.
where's the tension? I mean, what are we
Right,
doing?
right. The tension goes out the window if you're just throwing yourself off every cliff. It doesn't work that way. Also, I'm playing a character who doesn't want to die. So while I might expect them to die and I might think it's a good time, they don't want to, and I know that. And so, there's a responsibility there for me to add to the verisimilitude of the world by playing a character who does not want to die, who wants to struggle against that death. But I don't now, definitely because of my particular perspective on death and insanity, that is not something that I am anxious about at all. And so it is a category other than character death that will provide those things to me, just to sort of validate the point that you were making.
I think I don't know if Mike's heard of this, and it could have just been some YouTube commenter's nonsense and not scholarly at all. But I've heard that the fear of death is more aptly described as the fear of extinction, because it's not necessarily your physical death. It could be the death of soul. It could be the death of spirit. It could be the death of your autonomy, meaning you're taken over by something. It's a metaphorical death, as it were. And I heard it described as extinction of character. And I was like, that's a pretty interesting way to say it. As opposed to just getting an arrow through the head, there's other ways that, and not just physical death, but sort of a spiritual death, as it were, or something like that.
That's a great place to jump into the definition of terror, but I want to get to Space Roadie's comment first.
Yeah, it's a really good comment.
Yeah, in his horror games, the Space Roadie's horror games, I recommend avoidance of camp, full in-character play, and a no-takebacks philosophy to help develop the right atmosphere. Those are very, very solid recommendations.
Absolutely.
I think no camp in particular is probably very devastating to the approach that players will take to the game. That changes the tone and the mood entirely.
Now, before we move off of this point, and I know we're moving kind of slow, and I apologize, but
that's right.
When you sit down to watch a horror film, one of the things you do is you turn the lights off. One of the things you do is you ensure that there are no distractions. And we do this so we can fully imagine Jack Torrance stalking down the hallway with an axe or whatever it happens to be that we're watching, or Toni Collette banging her head into the ceiling in Hereditary. Good God, I get chills thinking about it. We wouldn't have on another TV with the Red Sox game. We wouldn't have the kids running around. We wouldn't have all the lights on. Now, I know that sometimes this is frowned upon in the role-playing setting because people are like, oh, you'd stop trying to make me feel things, right? But I think when you have an in-person game, and I've done this before, I've had the lights kind of low. I've had shadows lurking at the edge of the table. I've had maybe a very quiet, not super invasive little mood music on before, and my players have reported to me that that's effective because it helps them get into character. And I know that it might be difficult more. Now, this, I guess I'm piggybacking and taking Space Roadie's comment to the extreme. No camp, perfect, great. No stupid jokes. Don't be movie outburst guy. Don't be like, rule book guy. Don't be meta guy. I know this won't kill my character, all that crap. But I do think if you can control atmosphere a little bit, it does help you get to a place beyond just, I'm fearful my character might die. And I think it works. And maybe I'm a dork for saying that, but I really do. If I had people in-house and I was running Alien, I would have low light. I would have something like that to get people like in the headspace, right? Or help them get into the headspace they're trying to get to.
And Mike, I don't know if you were waiting to say something. I can hold my comment.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
Well, I'm going to probably need endorsement from you on this anyway, but I am fairly certain that when we were doing our reading for the last stream that we did, Mike, you and I, on immersion and is it achievable, and what it looks like in narrative transportation and autotelic engagement. There is a very strong case to be made that the more senses you can engage in an activity, the deeper the immersion becomes. And so when you engage things at the table, like the audible musics, the shadows flitting around the edge of the table, whatever it was that you were just describing that you do for your in-person games, there is a very strong argument that can be made that actually does deepen the immersion at that particular game during that experience. So it's a very reasonable, I think, well-researched, well-studied phenomenon.
And it's always going to vary table by table, city by city, culture by culture, player by player even. I mean, some players may not give a... If I was a player and you wanted me to be in your Call of Cthulhu game and we were in person and it was a chaotic environment, I would struggle to be in character.
Yeah,
I guess I can only speak for myself.
Well, right. And that's the thing, is that it's going to vary from person to person, right? It could be that the music is just really... They're really now hyper-focused on the primary frame because they know that it's not a diegetic soundtrack there. It's that could provide a struggle for some people. And I don't want to, I'm not making a blanket statement saying that, always put music on because that's going to make it more immersive. That's not the case. It's something
always not.
Right. But it is something to maybe consider and discuss during your session 0.
Totally.
When you're forming up your social contract. That is a very real thing to discuss.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Session 0.
Sure does.
It sure does. Just to add to what you both were talking about, I would say that when it comes to, setting the stage for the primary frame, which is what you're trying to do, you're trying to get the primary frame to be more amenable to closing that roll distance with the character. And there's going to be some things, like you guys have pointed out, some things for some people that will help do that. But one of those things that, of course, someone pointed out in the comments, I'm sorry, I'm not quick enough to read the name, but I'm quick enough to have seen the comment, which is if I have to squint to see my character sheet, right, that takes me out of my, takes me out of the character frame, right?
That was Nicholas.
Nicholas, thank you. But the idea is that some elements of that can really help. Too much, or for that matter, not the right ones, can, of course, have people retreat back to that primary frame and almost not, want to be too close to that character. You know what I mean? Because
if you made me wear a costume, that's where now you've pushed me too far. I got to dress like the guy at the table with the hat. Now I'm out of the game. So it's all personal experience. It's all going to be, what is it for that guy? Right. I might want the flitting shadows in the atmospheric control of the room, and maybe not music all the time, but then if you're like, hey, for this game we really want you to wear a steam coat jacket and the goggles and the hat because we think it would help you, and I tell you, but it's not going to help me, then I expect you to respect that, right? It's just not going to help me personally,
Yeah, and I have been in circumstances around a table where the music has helped.
Yeah.
And I've been in circumstances around a table where just a poorly curated track list where you can hear the track change. That you went from this kind of song into that kind of song. That's it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So
I was thinking like a table read. I was just say I'm thinking, and this is not the same. It's not even the same discipline. Pardon the highfalutin use of the word that doesn't apply here, but it's like a dress rehearsal versus a table read. If I'm doing a dress rehearsal, I probably would feel like I can get into this a little more than if I'm sitting doing a table read with people in a brightly lit, fluorescent lighting situation. It's the same kind of thing. But again, this is to each his own. That's really, it always comes back to each his own. But I've tied this up long enough. Do you want to buzz through some more?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go. While you're doing that, I'm actually going to take the opportunity to now define terror.
Okay.
And this is going to be the last one that we talk about. I was worried I was going to blow through these too quickly, but I think it's been paced pretty well. So terror is, again, not that I could find included in the APA definitions. So terror is consumption. Technically, terror is like bigger fear,
I gotcha.
but it's consuming. So it overpowers reason and can paralyze the mind and the body. This is usually the result of the confrontation with annihilation. It is recognition of powerlessness in the face of inevitability.
Annihilation's a better word than extinction. I like that word.
Well, it can be an extinction event, though, right? Like if you are faced with the inevitability of, if we all walk out our doors right now and we see some asteroid hanging in the sky hurtling toward Earth, that's terrifying. There is nothing we can do. We are going to inevitably end in however long.
Smoke them if you got them.
Right. And so that would be a terror response. Now, because terror is bigger fear, you can't really get there at the table, but you can implement circumstances that are helpless and even hopeless. Hopelessness is better than helplessness because you never want to remove agency from the players such that they can't act in character to do something. So helplessness, and this actually traces back again to conversations I've had with Ben. Helplessness is usually like last ditch. Hopelessness, putting them in a hopeless situation, is far better. So you can borrow elements of terror to heighten the anxiety and the dread and the horror at the table. But you can't actually get to terror because it's a paralytic. It's you are overcome. It is consuming you, and that's not actually going to happen without that fear response. So
to shout out. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
First.
It's completely off. Okay. It's off topic.
Gotcha. Real quick, I was just going to say, anxiety, dread, probably a little bit of fright, or you can borrow elements from fright with introducing elements suddenly. Horror for sure, and you can borrow elements from terror in order to really achieve those levels of immersion that you're capable of through the game at the table.
Love it.
But get rid of fear. You're never going to get to fear. That's not the goal, and it can't be. It's
Games Workshop had it right because they used to have. Now I haven't played Warhammer since 6th edition, but they had if a creature caused fear, it could be subject to horror. But if a creature caused horror, it could not be subject to fear. So even in their miniature gaming world, the creature that caused horror was the ultimate in scary. Meaning, if you did cause fear, you'd have to take a fear check against a fear-causing enemy. And if you caused fear, you'd only have to take a fear check against a terror-causing enemy. And terror-causing enemies didn't take any checks because they were the epitome of scary. Yeah. And I think that's really cool. It's interesting that your definition is in line with that. I want to shout out my very dear friend, Brian, who's joined the stream. Thanks for popping in, Brian. He says, understanding the correct terminology seems to serve the goal of better role-playing. Is my character fearful? Is my character anxious? Is my character feeling dread? Yep, I agree. Knowing the terms helps you get in the right headspace, I think.
I certainly agree with that.
Super handy.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that it contributes to the collaboration that you're working with the GM and the other players to achieve. If you're talking the same language at session 0, then that goes a long way in helping that collaboration achieve the goal of those circumstances.
That's such a great point. Session 0 really benefits from agreeing on terms.
And that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to everyone getting to the table and saying, okay, we want a horror game. Let us conduct ourselves in a manner that allows us to achieve a horror game. It's not about, the GM wants to run a horror game, and I'm over here going to poison that by constantly cracking jokes. And look, cracking jokes is a valid response to fear stimulus, right? Or threat
in character.
In character, right.
Do it in character. Yeah, do it in character.
It's called Gallows humor games, guys.
So BGD says, I think awareness of the game frame is always respected. We as GMs running horror scenarios endeavor to set the scene so that players are inclined to say, this would be really scary if it were real.
Interesting.
I think that's maybe part of the issue, right? Because if it were real, we'd experience fear in many contexts within an RPG, much less a horror RPG. But knowing that you're shooting for a different set of character emotions might actually facilitate that better, because then the measure of it isn't if this was real, would this be fearful, or would someone be afraid, but rather, currently as you play your character, are you able to tap into that dread, or are you able to tap into that anxiety that is going on for that character?
Love it.
Yeah, I agree. Canticle of Restlessness. It does help to isolate the specific cerebral and psychological functionings here. We may not be able to get actual literal fear, but now we know what we aren't going for. Could run the gamut and go through the list. Yes, and that, I think that's really kind of, that was my thought process when I heard what I heard that I didn't like, and it kind of prompted this stream. The goal, obviously the goal can't be fear, right? So what is the goal? You have all of these terms now that you can arm yourself with, and all of these methods by which to get there in the game. And I think that that will provide a more fruitful experience because you're aiming at a target you can hit.
I dig it.
In my view.
I dig
Space Roadie. These are really narrow definitions that don't really relate to how people use the words. I disagree with that. I think that a lot of common usage comes down to broad application, so I would agree. But I think that if we're going to talk about role-playing, and if we're going to talk about the specifics of how to achieve specific things at the table, I think that it's worthwhile. But I would, because I love terminology. If that's not something that you're into, if you think that it's superfluous or that it's a little bit over the top or that it's not really worthwhile, I get it. I'm not, I get it. I do think it's worthwhile. And I think that there are enough people out there as well who would, be interested in this.
Yeah, I think it's, look, if you're watching Bacon's channel, you should come to know that he focuses on terms. I think Space Roadie knows that. But I do think, I think both can be true. I do think it's very important to understand. I think it's important everybody speaks the same language when you're trying to communicate. And if not, trying to get to that same language is very helpful because it's way more efficient. And then I do think once you're there and in the game, I think when we get to praxis, I think that's where the rubber meets the road. And maybe, I don't want to put words in Space Roadie's mouth, but that's what it comes down to. When we're sitting at the table, when we decided we're going to play a horror game, eject the terms for just a minute. I think we're going to know if we're successful or not without defining the terms. Space Roadie's point. Do you see what I'm saying?
No. If that's the point, then I misread it, and I completely agree. I have said there was a stream. Lord Mattias had me on his second watch a couple of weeks ago, and one of the very first things I said was that all the stuff that I talk about on my channel gets thrown right out the window the second you sit at the table.
Right.
The terms don't matter. This intellectualization doesn't matter. What matters is what's going on at the table right now. I get that. I agree with that. And I think that is natural. It is the natural state. However, apart from the table, we can have these discussions.
I agree. Yeah. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
There's the theory crafting, and then there's the praxis. I think it's okay to engage in both.
Agree. I would. So take that for what it's worth.
You better. You're going to cancel your whole channel.
Canticle of Restlessness. Horror sounds like how Tomb of Lime got into this. You take one element and make it wrong against cultural exemptions, possibly expectations. And that pet kitten and that actually consumes blood instead of milk.
There you go.
Yeah, that can work, right?
Brian
says, do you want to read this? Because he's...
No, you can go.
Okay. Do you think the GM elicits fear? Is it more a response of the player or the character? You can't get to fear.
Right.
And it's possible that you came in after we discussed.
He did.
Fear. Okay, so...
he did, yep.
you can't get to fear. Fear is an autonomic response. It's based on an actual perceived threat. It is regulated by the amygdala. So you can't actually get to fear. Fear is not the goal.
But the important part of that question is that it comes down to it always ends up being incumbent on the player. But I do think that the GM can make an environment in which it is easier for the player to achieve said response.
Agree.
If you're a shit GM and you're distracted and you're on your phone and you're looking around and you're not engaged at the table, why would your players be engaged at the table? And vice versa, if the player is not, it's going to be tough for the DM. So I think it comes down to table cohesion.
Yeah.
Let me jump in on that too.
Please
because, I was going to say that if we sidetrack the issue of fear and introduce one of the other concepts we've talked about, and if the question is where is the onus for that experience, the answer is the entire table. Like everybody bears the burden for having the desired experience of those series of terror and anxiety and horror and so forth. But one of the things that happens is that everybody's working a little differently, right? The GM is creating a space for that to occur. The players are creating a character that experiences it within that space. And so everybody has a different sort of piece of the puzzle to make it work.
Excellent.
Yes. And I also, to add to that, and I don't know, you probably even got to it, Mike, but just, I guess, I don't know, to be more specific, because I have it in my brain.
Sure.
Even though the players don't experience the fear and they cannot experience the fear, even though the players aren't, the characters are. Mm-hmm. And so when you push into the world as your character, you can react to that fear stimulus that you are not afraid of, but that your character is. And your descriptions of their actions should be, you should be able to pick up on the fear that your characters are experiencing.
What a great catch. Yeah. We're not saying don't role play fear.
Right. Yeah.
I'm so glad you're saying that. Yeah. Because fear happens to the character, even if it doesn't happen to the player.
Exactly.
Right.
So you should always role play it if the character is afraid, because they are, but you don't have to be in a state of fear to role play the fear.
Right.
Yeah. Space Ready says players generally have a blunted reaction to violence in RPGs. Yeah. I agree, but as
it's unfortunate,
ever
but
the
it's
case,
true.
If, you get back to the session 0, and you identify, the tone, then you can sort of set a tone where they should react. In if it's a horror game, then as Mike said, the burden's incumbent on everyone to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Nicholas has a good answer.
Nicholas says, it's Space Roadie. It's because they're not role-playing. They're playing. Most entertainment is about violence in a secondhand way, even video games. Most never really fought in real life to consider the cost of it. That's a really good answer.
You ain't kidding. We're skipping.
I'm out of definitions, man. Hurry up. I'm kidding. And the Mechanical Restlessness says, but no fear. So anxiety and dread only from the consequences, and cultural dysphoria, and then a kind of seems like the element which makes it genre. I am not.
No, I think he's misunderstanding or mistyping. Anxiety and dread only from the consequence. No, the possible consequence, right? Isn't that what we determined?
Anxiety and dread are both anticipatory.
Right.
Anxiety is diffuse. It is a general anticipatory negativity. Dread is specific. You are dreading that the killer's going to find you in the closet. You are anxious that maybe one day you will be visited by a killer. That's the difference between the two of them. That might not be the best example. Grognar Guy. Part of 40 roleplay is seeking and creating fictional meaning. If you don't do that, you won't experience fear of any kind in that context. Well, except maybe the fear of losing, which isn't roleplay. If you don't do that, you won't experience fear. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Nobody liked the bug there.
Hello. Thank you
What's up, Andrew?
Coming here. Yeah, this is right.
Hey, Andrew has a great mothership show, YouTube channel where he does plays of Mothership. It's fantastic. I love it,
Wow.
man.
Yeah, they're excellent.
It's really,
They're excellent.
really good. Really high production quality.
So dark lighting plus RGB lighting while playing Alien is awesome. I bet it is.
Yep. Elf Hunter, I'm glad to hear this from him.
As a dirty 4D'er, I dim the lights too. Hey, Elf Hunter, what's up, man? Nice to have you here.
Captain Nick.
Having to squint to see my character sheet would take me out of the game. Yep, there it is. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Doesn't have to be squinty. It doesn't have to be that
there
dark.
are-
Jesus.
You can be overbearing with engaging the senses. There's
Sure,
a fine line to walk between highlighting the primary frame and incorporating elements of it to achieve deeper immersion.
I agree.
Yep, always play with music in person, but it's always instrumental. That's a really good decision.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I'm not going to put on Pearl Jam for crying out loud
No,
in the middle of my
no that's not a good. Yeah,
in the
right.
middle of my high adventure Conan story.
Right. Jeremy in the middle of combat ring. You know?
Jeremy spoke, and I'm trying to kill a guy with a hand and a half sword.
Yeah.
Jeez, Louise, what are we doing?
Dim the lights may end up getting sort of proverbialized, extended further and in more areas for spotlights, intensifies attachment removal of internal distractions.
That's funny. Yeah. More. I'm going to
Disagree
click
respectfully
faster, I
with-
swear.
No, you're good. You're good. Disagree respectfully with Space Birdie's caveats about horror scenarios. Horror games are frequently cinematic, and that's part of the fun. Sometimes a player narrating 2D or 3D action is enjoyable.
This is the answer to not being able to read your sheet. Just
Memorize
memorize it. Where's your rules mastery now,
Yeah.
huh? We'll skip. We don't need to broadcast the debates, I assume.
Yeah, you can probably.
Yeah, the promise of
inter-chat
Teddy
debates
Dice
are
goes
always
through these
lively and
atmosphere.
fun, but it's not
Dice
necessary.
Tales, what's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for stopping by. Atmosphere and immersion are necessary prerequisites.
Brian gets
Yeah.
it. Your Rogue Ranger isn't referencing Pulp Fiction, he says. Yeah.
You're Rogue Ranger.
Did you catch that? The elf is probably not quite quoting Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
We are already playing a game of pretend. Players can put an effort into pretending to be fearful when their characters would be afraid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agree.
Another question.
Question. With the subject of other emotions finally broached, and if we are here to role play, then what other emotions and expressions do we show? Whatever's
that's-
appropriate for the character and the situation, I think, right?
Well,
Like that's
our
really...
next video is going to be about true love.
And that one's an in-person video. We're going to be in the same room for that, but I didn't mean to
I'll
make
get-
you do a spit take. I'm
I'll
sorry.
get the lights ready, buddy. And the music. We're going Lionel Richie,
Yeah. Yeah.
Marvin Gaye.
Nice. Nice. Good choices.
Not bad, right?
Yeah.
Gail
Gale
Guy.
Guy. I think they're good definitions. It's just a little weird since people rarely burrow into the specifics of fear versus terror, etc. No, I get it, right? And that's kind of what's landed us in a situation where a lot of the advice that you'll hear regarding role-playing and fear is that you have to make your players fearful, and how to make your players fearful, and how to keep them in this fear state, and what to do as a GM. And it
Yeah.
all ends up being pretty bad advice because they're aiming at a target they can't hit.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's another element to this, which is that, and we kind of got at this with a comment a little bit earlier, but there clearly is a distinction between how a concept is used, say, in psychology, and how a concept is used in just the vernacular of everyday society. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
sometimes those have overlap. Sometimes they're very different. But, you know, the idea is that, you know, when we think of fear and terror and horror and anxiety and this and that, some might look at that as being on a continuum of connotation versus, you know, what they mean. And fine. I mean, you know, the vernacular, you know, when I say I'm terrified versus I'm afraid, I'm obviously trying to express something very different in either context. But the benefit of having the definitions, at least in my mind, is the idea that you know what you're shooting for, right? That you're shooting for the right things for your character and creating the right space for those things to be experienced.
Right.
I
It's unlikely.
completely agree with that.
It's
Completely. It's
unlikely.
not like. Go ahead, Dean. I'm sorry.
Oh, you go.
No, you go first.
It's unlikely Bacon's going to stop you and go, no. You're not afraid. You're fearful.
Right. And that's
In the middle of the game, he just stops the game. He goes, listen, guys, I'll walk away from this table. That's not going to happen.
Terms right.
Well, actually,
yeah.
If there is a meteor hurtling toward Earth, right, and a young child grips her father's hand and says, "I'm scared, Dad," like, who's going to stop him and say, well, actually? So I was actually going to make the same comment. I was just embellishing.
Right.
I can't be at this table anymore. You guys just do not know your language.
Yes.
You should do that, Mike. You should be like, look, I didn't become a doctor of psychology for this crap. Shuts the door. See you later.
I'm out. You guys are butchering my field.
Right. You were streaming on 2 channels. Okay, we got that. Trying to run horror. I think we did this one. Did we go backwards? Players.
Yes, we did do that one.
Okay, so this one. Boom. Wade Crow.
Willingness to use one's imagination. If you are willing to fully imagine yourself in that situation, it will elicit the fear you would feel if you were really in the scenario. Unfortunately, it would not. Not fear. Because
outside of PTSD as established.
Right. Correct.
Or other related disorders. But
right. Disorders.
Right. So it's look, people treat fear differently because it is different. Right. So it's just a situation where imagining yourself as hard as you can in a scenario where you are afraid is not going to actually get you a fear response. Your brain has to perceive an imminent threat to your physical body. Otherwise, you're just not going to get there.
Absolutely. Kingmaker's being sarcastic.
Hey, Kingmaker.
God bless
your
him.
favorite. I got to get you on here at some point. We can have a rad conversation.
Yep.
But yeah, I also love theory.
Canticle, thanks so much for all the participation tonight.
Yes, thank you so much. It could have been an entire new program on how to naturalize the application of theory into practice, or it could be rather. It could be an entire new program.
Absolutely, I think actually that is one of some of the YouTubers that are trying to explain how to do, fear or horror games right or whatever. That is what they want to do, although I don't think they're always successful at it or often successful. But I think that it starts with understanding what you're shooting for. I mean, we can take a game like Dread where you use the Jenga tower, and every time you make a poll for success or failure, and when the Jenga tower falls over, someone dies. That's the whole mechanic, really. Yep. And the Jenga tower itself inspires that dread or anxiety. I mean, it's called Dread is the game, but it inspires that dread and anxiety from the table, and certainly helps, with the character role play. And so there's a fine example where the makers of the game knew what they were shooting for, right? They weren't shooting for fear.
Right.
They weren't shooting, they were shooting for a very specific targeted experience. And that contributes a great deal to the in-character role play at the table.
Good stuff.
It's like when I watch horror movies with my wife, when there's a jump scare coming, I'll slowly grab her leg and then jump when the scare comes to make it worse. Yep, it's a collaborative effort.
Right.
And now that you mention it, there was a time where I may have elicited fear at the table once because I was kind of describing something quietly, and then I lunged, literally reached across the table and made a loud noise in the player like this. We were kids. And I was like, well, maybe if you have to do it that way, but I don't recommend it.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Dice Tales. Don't know if I missed this from earlier, but fear and horror are not the same. Yes, we did get into that. I defined the terms as we went. Horror is absolutely achievable at the table. It is cultural. It is how did I say it? Horror. It's a revulsion or shock when confronted with something grotesque
Yes.
unnatural, incomprehensible, or wrong. There's a perceived wrongness, and it doesn't require fear, and you can absolutely get there in the description at the table. In fact, I think this is the one that you can probably arrive at the most consistently.
Fear is immediate. Horror is not, doesn't have to be. There's also another way to say it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about this?
Mechanical. Game mechanics to impose that involuntary amygdala fear response. Keep a loaded gun on the table.
I mean,
that's all you got.
Right. There are game mechanics that can inspire anxiety or inspire dread. I talked about an example already, but I mean, just the idea of I personally am up in the air about this mechanic myself, but like sanity loss is meant to sort of symbolize that impending doom that someone might experience in, say, Call of Cthulhu or something, right? And to the extent that you get closer and closer to making a roll or doing a thing that imposes some new affliction on your character, right, that can inspire anxiety or dread from the player, that their character is now going to have to, that they're now have to role play this new, sanity loss or whatever. But there's other things too, and I think that's the way in which really good systems try to implement mechanics that try to instantiate in the mechanics what the character should be role playing or experiencing, and I think that that's part of why they're called horror games or they're called games that are shooting for those kind of emotional sets.
Yeah.
Speaking of shooting,
stress mechanics and such.
Speaking of shooting, I'm not actually telling anyone to bring a loaded gun to their game table, just to be clear.
Good disclaimer.
Yeah, got to get that in there.
He follows up with asking if that would be an imposition on 4D. I guess it depends on how it plays out.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on quite a bit of detail. That's a really terrible answer. It depends, but that's what we got.
Maybe.
Nobody wake the bugbear. You can pretend to be afraid to enhance the mood and tone at the table for other people. Yes. For example, say if you're in a group using a Ouija board, if someone moves it on purpose but then denies moving it, it would creep the others out more. And then I think there's another one. Yeah. Or telling ghost stories around a campfire. If you get into it, you can contribute to the overall atmosphere of the fear. Yes, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here comes our 4Dest 4D'er in the bunch here.
Yes. Nicholas responds to Canticle and says, the more a system turns natural things into mechanic gimmick, the harder it is to maintain that ideal in-character flow state, unless it's baked into the role and doesn't take RAM.
And he
I would
continues.
likely agree with that. Or maybe the system is simplistic enough where having that amygdala mechanic wouldn't be much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it would really require... I think that it would have to be really unique, which means it would require a great deal of practice to become skilled with, but this is just spitballing without like a specific example of a mechanic. I
also don't know if it's always just a gimmick. I mean, that might be a bit of a dysphonism, but like if I think utilizing a stress mechanic is like Alien uses a stress mechanic, correct? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? Do you feel it does a good job of informing the role playing in creating conflict resolution that helps with the setting of Alien?
I will say this. I have praised the stress mechanic in Alien, but taking a critical look at it, I think what it actually does is provides me, the player, with a level of anxiety with what's going to happen to my character. The player, I'm the one that's building the dice pool. So I'm the one adding the yellow dice going, oh my gosh, that's 3 potential ones. Oh my gosh, that's 6 potential ones. Potential failure. I can cascade from there. That's the player doing that. And while I do think it adds to the experience, I don't think it's really necessary for. Wait, am I answering this correctly? Am I
So far, so good.
Okay.
I mean, you seem solid so far.
Yeah. So like, I like the mechanic. I love that game. But is it necessary? No, probably not. Especially when you look at it critically and you consider, well, it's not informing my character. The goings on within the world are informing my character's action. The dice are informing my expectations of those actions within the world. And that can be effective, right? Just like having music on at the table or lighting, like it can provide a layer of depth. And it's also pretty effortless. Like it's just building a dice pool. So it's not like it doesn't really require a whole lot of cognitive effort to get there. So it likely varies from person to person. I have not really experienced an Alien game where that's gotten in the way to the point where I've gone up. I'm out of character now. I have 75 dice I have to roll. It's just I've never gotten there. I guess if you're really lucky, the possibility exists.
So the follow-up to that would be, so sometimes when I am evaluating a game system, I ask myself, first and foremost, if it gets in the way, it should be removed. The next thing I ask myself is, does this add to the experience at the table?
Sure.
And then, of course, there is also the tertiary piece, which is, well, if I undo this, do I break the entire system?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to undermine the whole system by taking out one rule, right?
Taking out stress does undermine the entire system,
It
because
does,
the only way you can fail is on a stress die. So if you take those stress die away, you can literally only ever succeed.
Right.
I think the other thing about stress that I like about that mechanic, just from my perspective, is that it initially is pretty helpful. Like stress is initially can be a very beneficial response to a variety of things. And the stress isn't all bad. There's very beneficial stress too. We have eustress and distress, so on and so forth. But the point is that in that game context, stress can help performance. And then there becomes sort of a fuzzy window when stress becomes almost too much, and you're due for a fail.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that idea because I like you're riding the race car in the red, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, you can push it, but I think it's also, it seems like such a apropos way to help us realize the moment where Hicks and Aliens is like, I'm killing everything before I go out, right? It's that moment of like dumping it all in before he gets pulled under the floorboards. And how do you make that, can you make that cool mechanically while also not getting in the way of the role playing? And that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think that I think that the stress mechanic it's very successful in my experience. I mean, it does absolutely simulate actual tension. Right.
You're right.
And like
For
you were describing, like it's helpful at first, but you add that next die in and you're stretched that much thinner. And you add the next one in, you're stretched that much thinner. You're getting closer and closer to a catastrophic failure or cascading stress or whatever it happens to be. I actually really do like that mechanic. Brian, advice for role-playing emotional response when playing a mechanically complex game?
It's a good question.
I would probably need more concrete information. Like, give me a specific game and a specific scenario. I mean, it's usually you can probably pretty well always role play an emotional response when you're role playing. Get too mechanically complex and it's likely out of bounds of 4D, just because you're going to be focused on the rules too frequently.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean that the mechanics themselves are going to prevent you from getting in character in windows, right? You might not be consistently able to stay in character for the duration of the game, but in the windowed opportunities you have to get in character, it should be pretty well the same as doing it in any kind of game.
It's a perfect way to explain it. It's less about the mechanic. It's less about how does one role play an emotional response in a mechanically complex game. It's more, are the mechanics getting in the way of my role play and reducing the amount of time I'm getting to role play, to wit, draw steel.
Yes.
God damn it.
We know that one.
Shout out to
I
Tom.
think
Love
even
Tom.
there, like automaticity with the rules goes a long way in facilitating the role play, to the extent that you can automatically interpret the dice and you can automatically interpret the context for that dice roll. That goes a long way in being able to synthesize that with your role play.
Right on. Awesome.
Indeed.
Grognard guy, that's funny.
When I'm the GM, I grab my players' legs. It scares them every time. That'll do it.
Remind me not to bring my wife to his game. Some more from Bry.
So asking Mike, this is for you, is being an intrinsically anxious person a performance-enhancing condition? Somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Awesome. I checked the corner, man. I checked the corner. Is my gun loaded? I check around the corner. I know what
I mean, there's a point, like anxiety has a benefit for preparedness, but there's a point where anxiety is too much and you are not able to engage that executive functioning sufficiently to order your preparedness in an adaptive way.
Indeed. Well said.
Can you go up a little bit to the Switters comment?
Sure thing. This one?
Yeah, that one right there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I thought he was talking about me.
Bacon wants to take a victory lap. He's
gonna hate that I'm saying this out loud. I'll deal with it as it comes. But that's my brother. So.
Right on.
Thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing up, man.
That's awesome. Crispy, you're on notice.
Hey, Crispy, what's up? Thanks for swinging by.
Yeah, stochastics with you. Seems to be with you on that.
The stress dice in Alien are a cue to the player, no doubt. How the player interprets that is up to them. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, in the context of an alien horror game, there's a lot to respond to. I don't necessarily know if I need the dice to tell me how stressed I am in the moment, but it can be an indicator for some. And as I said to Dean earlier, if you you're removing the failure mechanic entirely if you cut that out of the game. So it has to be there. And I've always had fun playing that game. I've played it quite a bit.
This is more of a pontification for possible future content. Not that I want to drag some poor combat veteran onto this, but I always think stress in firearms is always never... They just never have a good way to do it. I'm going to bring this back to the content to not bring us off I'm just thinking out loud, but I think I'm a sucker for good mechanics. That's where I sometimes struggle a little bit with the idea of 4D, because so much of it is eject mechanics because role play is God. So it's like, which I agree a lot with, by the way, but I'm also sometimes I flip through these really cool books with really clever systems. I'm like, oh man, can we make this work? Hence, there's draw, steal, role play, right? And I always think about that. And the stress mechanic in Alien is so cool to me. And even if it might be a lot of extra dice or what have you, I still like the idea of it giving some more options for a player to consider, which they may not consider, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you strip away every single rule, let's just say there's no rules and you're just improvising at the table, I feel like you're always going to fall back on certain patterns, but mechanics can interrupt those patterns a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree with that for sure.
I think
that's a really solid point to make. Yeah,
I think mechanics are critical to the type of value we try to get from role-playing games. I wouldn't... If role-playing games were strictly improv without mechanics, it wouldn't be the experience that would be as intriguing to me, that has kept me going since I was 13.
Here. Yeah, same here.
So the mechanics clearly are important and they inform the experience, and that uncertainty introduces its own element to the shake things up.
The excitement.
Right? Yeah. But I think that they're critically important in that way. But I think, once again, there's a line where mechanics become overwrought. Draw, steal, I think, cross that line well.
Sure.
But, overwrought, and they get in the way then of, the experience I'm looking for anyway.
it's an interesting. You're holding things in tension, right?
Right.
Like heavy mechanics seems to pull on the ability to role play. 100%, improv can't really utilize rules, so it's like it's a weird. They're on a weird scale where they slide together, I think, sometimes. And then it's always like, Easy D6 is very popular with the 4D group, and that seems to be like, that's the perfect, it's speedy, but it's got some cool touches to it and that too. But yeah, anyway. Thinking out loud, by the way, I'm less, this is how I do it. I've worn bacon before. I think out loud a lot.
It's rad. Think out loud. Yeah,
Good
think out loud.
thoughts.
Yeah. Dice Tales.
I was going to only add that I wouldn't say, we could say that Draw Steel pushes more toward the game context, and consequently people could get very immersed in that game context, as we talked about last time. Bacon, you and I were talking about immersion. So it's sort of like, choosing where you want to be immersed, where improv to me wouldn't inspire immersion much at all,
Great call. Kingmaker's still laughing over Daddy. I'm scared. Well, actually.
Canonical Restlessness. By impose involuntary fear response, I meant to simulate that, force it onto the character via mechanic. Gotcha.
Okay. Trust the player, though, I would say.
Taborn Crispy. Question for Mike. What sort of observable physical tells could I incorporate into my character that would be understood as a stress response? Cold sweat, shaking hands, etc. This is the first role play question I think we've gotten tonight. And of course it would be Crispy.
Let's
so thank
go,
you very
Crispy.
much for that, Crispy.
Just throw up right at the table, Crispy.
I mean, what kind of role player are you?
Call yourself an aggressive role player?
Yeah. Let's see that aggression. No, so the when I have role played stress, sometimes I do tics, like with my eyebrows or something.
Right.
Sometimes I do like repeated like rubbing of the hands or things like that. Or if I'm playing aggression, I might, bunch my hands or things like that. It's hard, obviously, to get the cold sweats just on command. I personally am not that good an actor, but if you are, go for it. But yeah, shaky hands, looking around a lot, things like that. Those signs that, and of course it also comes out in what people say, because when people are anxious and experience, especially at the high end of anxiety, they tend to talk about that anxiety, whether they realize they are or not. So, if we are walking through the woods and I'm anxious about being in the woods, I'm going to say, wow, it's pretty dark here. Wow. Yep. I haven't been in dark woods like this in ever, actually.
Are you guys sure we can't go around? Can we go around?
Is it really necessary not to take a flashlight?
I'm going to be at the truck, guys, just in case they call.
Right.
Chicken shit.
Also, I think there's a number of like physical things. Tense shoulders go a long way in that. If you want to heighten that, your voice will change. So people under stress tend to get, especially acute stress, tend to have a slightly higher voice pitch. So their voice goes up a little bit. I mean, I'm exaggerating it, but the idea is like, is this really necessary? Something like that. But I'm exaggerating. Obviously, it's a much more subtle pitch change than that.
Yeah.
But
I would actually recommend in the moment of role play that you do something that is atypical for your character. So if your character's talkative, get quiet and reserved. If you're quiet and reserved, get talkative, talk fast. Like those sorts of I'll call them oppositional behaviors to the whatever your character's nature is generally a much more easier to read broadcast for anxiety than if you're a nervous guy normally and your hands start to shake, like no one's going to notice that. But if you are like rock solid and you hold your hand up and it's shaking in front of your face, that's a completely different story. So.
One thing
hey,
too,
Chubby Funster, thanks for stopping by, man.
What's up, Chubby? Just on table run. Far be it from me to tell Crispy how to role play, but I was thinking, this is again, this is very tangential. I'll keep it brief, but this is where I think there's a really good exercise when you're making a character that I like to do, and that is imagining what they would do in scenarios before I even get to the table. To almost, it's less spontaneous, but you might be like, okay, who is this guy? What do I like about him? What's his things? And then I will sometimes imagine something about the guy before I sit down to play. That's why I love session zeros and fleshing out the character a little bit. And sometimes I'll even say like, okay, how would he respond to this? What would he do if he found $100 bill? What would he do if, and I don't know if that's always necessary depending on the context of the game in the session zero, but sometimes I can inform what his tics may be ahead of time if you know a little bit about the character going in. It's harder if it's a straight up, no prep kind of thing because you don't really know the character. So but knowing your character, I think, also helps with that too. Anyway. What's up, Chubby? Mothership is great for 40, says Andrew. I agree. Oh, in theory, I've never played it, but...
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. Brian, tension and stress seem to be the corollary emotional responses at the table to fear and terror for the character.
Yeah, I mean, you'd act...
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, you'd act out the fear or terror that your character would experience.
Right.
But you yourself, right, might at best feel some tension, some stress from that, character frame.
Yep.
I like the question. I like to role play personality shift as stress accumulates, speaking differently, getting more reckless, more skittish, short-tempered, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Did I miss the beginning of this?
I don't think so. I don't see it if you did.
Yeah.
That involuntary nature of fear, though, that is urging me to consider circumventing player narrative agency. If I was playing, having myself do something totally out of my control when legitimately, I think there's a follow-up.
I'm sorry. I was writing a note.
I think that should improve my immersion and further agency.
Interesting.
Yeah, give it a shot.
It's funny. This gets back to when we were talking about defining terms, agencies. Like, there's agency in how, there's vernacular, as Mike said, and then there is, the Continentals still haven't decided what agency is. They've been arguing it since Aristotle. So it's like you have like these established philosophical debates, and then you have how do people just use the word in common parlance, right?
Crispy, talking about anxiety is a really good idea. Show the stress in the dialogue.
Yeah.
100%. Higher voice, faster cadence.
Yep. Another thing, just as an aside, just because it occurred to me, I would take the opportunity to watch people experiencing stress of different levels and take a look at some of the indicators to you that they're experiencing stress at extreme or mild levels. Become an observer of the human condition, if you will, goes a long way too, because, that is something that we can do to sort of put into our role play bank of our tool chest, if you will, that we can bring out later.
Indeed.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Yep.
Nicholas says, my general tip for role play is to not think about thinking. It makes things too messy and kills authenticity. That can certainly happen.
Is that paradoxical? Do not think about thinking?
It may be.
I don't know. And I'm going to think about that all night because of him. I generally agree with that because I think once you're at the table, it's everything else is too late, right?
Yes.
But yes. I do think there is something to be said about character creation and understanding who you're about to sit down and then play by just trying to achieve what Nicholas sounds like he's saying is a type of flow, right? But I think it's okay to think about your character ahead of time to maybe know who that person is. But maybe that's just a philosophical difference between me and Nicholas. I'm not sure. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Crispy.
Thanks, Crispy.
Your body knows how to feel. Let it do the thinking for you. Solid advice.
Fair enough.
Stochastic agency at Tailborn or Crispy. At least your RP question was more contextually relevant than mine. Thanks for asking. I don't think that. I think yours was plenty contextually relevant. We're talking about many different things. Just the fact that he was the first person to ask an actual role play question is just par for that course, I think. He is a praxis guy
through and through.
Yep. That's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is.
Ooh,
there's a lot to learn over on Crispy's channel. Atypical. Is that like the secondary Jungian traits? Our shadow comes out during stress? No, I don't necessarily think so. I think that it's I think that's maybe an over application of the discussion that we're having.
Yep.
Know your character seems like a good axiom up there with know the rules.
I
agree.
Completely agree.
Absolutely.
That's a home run comment to me.
Is he I think he
Sorry, gotcha.
No, I was trying to figure out what was being said. But you know what fear feels like. If you're wearing the character skin, you can filter the feeling through the character. Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. And we actually addressed that, I think, earlier on.
Whoops.
Earlier on in the discussion. What would happen if you 4D role players have a cinematic situation interrupted by simulating parts of their character's psychology which aren't fully in their control?
Is there a continuation
necessarily.
of that?
No, there's just an ellipsis.
Cinematic situation.
It's dramatic. So what would happen if you 4D role players have a cinematic situation? I would need to know what that means exactly. Interrupted by simulating parts of their character's psychology, which aren't fully in their control. Okay, so if I can take a small stab at this, I think that this is something I struggled with when I first found this group, and that is remembering to separate player and character. Player always has control outside of mechanics interrupting your plans, right? Mm-hmm. So if your character gets goosebumps, if the hair stands up on their neck, if they get sick to their stomach because of something they see, I don't necessarily think that that's best applied through the GM. I think you have to trust the player to role play their character that way. So maybe that's what he's getting to, unless he's... I mean, well, character psychology is separate from player psychology, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm sure he'll clarify what he means by that. But what would happen if 4D psychology which aren't fully in their control? Simulating? I don't know. That's a tough question that I don't quite understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think I'm in Elf Hunter. My voice goes higher when I'm nervous. I freaking hate it. But confirm it's the thing.
Gil guy thinking about not thinking is Buddhist. What else do we got here? Some back and forth. It's Nick and Kent to go back and forth, and we'll jump to this.
So Dice Tale says, horror often involves loss of agency by the character. It's kind of a conflict with... let me start over. Horror often involves loss of agency by the character. It's kind of a conflict with 4D. I've heard people say you can roleplay the loss of agency, but I'm not entirely sold on that. I don't necessarily think horror involves the loss of agency. Fear...
Not unless it's mechanically based by something supernatural. But then again,
okay, sure, yes.
Right? Like if you're standing before Dracula and he has a supernatural charm that is like a spell and it's mechanical, then yes, you can lose agency, but you're supposed to be able to lose agency by the things within the game world, not the GM. If you face Dracula, he will take your agency away, and that's not a violation as far as I can tell.
Yeah, right. Yes, it's
if I grapple you, I've taken away your agency to leave, but I've grappled you in the game, so that's not like I'm committing a 4D sin.
Agree.
Right?
Agree with that, yeah.
It's for the same reason if I kill you, I've taken away your agency. Ultimately, you have none, you're dead. But it's not that I did it as the GM. The orc killed you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Am I being crazy on that? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a very reasonable take. Part of the problem is the player does not know what the insane effect stems from necessarily for what its goal is. Can't roleplay what you don't know. Reasonable. I mean...
Wait,
well,
sorry.
I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I understand what you're getting at, though. I certainly understand.
I'm not quite grasping it, but I wanted to address, like, if you don't know where the insane effect stems from, like in a cosmic horror, it stems from the powerlessness against these cosmic entities. In Aliens, for example, it stems from the idea that you're up against these hidden warrior type creatures that you can't possibly destroy quickly enough and easily enough to overcome. I guess I would need more specifics here, because I'm not sure I fully get it.
Table runner.
Personally, I don't find it disruptive to flow should the GM say that I've failed a roll. I think that requires agility to role play, and I love the challenge in the moment. I certainly agree with that. I mean,
100%.
we're playing role-playing games. There are certain prerequisites that must be met. There's going to be adjudication. There's going to be action resolution mechanics, and I agree with you. I don't think it's disruptive. It's a part of the game.
I agree with Table Runner. Nicholas.
You can still role play how you get mesmerized. Good chance to show a side of your character only you know. Brilliant. Yep.
Agreed. 100%. I'm with you on that one, Nicholas.
The Dracula thing's right on.
Sorry.
I may have misunderstood what you said then, Dice Tales. I think Dean did definitely knock it out of the park, though.
Yeah.
Mechanical. It seems like a skill which needs a bit of building most of the time, Crispy. I wouldn't be able to stay and flow myself most of the time. Well, that's would recommend that you go and check out the immersion video. Mike and I spoke about immersion a week ago, 2 weeks
Something
ago.
like that.
Can't remember. It's recent, and it was a live stream, so check the live stream. But you might get something out of that. Keeping the interruption visceral and well timed would be pretty important for the fear effect, I think.
Huh. I dig that.
Brian, part of role-playing often is stepping out of who you personally are. Yes. So you definitionally need to step into someone else's shoes. Yes.
Tear off your skin, as Max likes to say.
Indeed.
A very skill issue.
Skill issue.
Wise guy.
Without sounding like a douche, I think you can stay in flow most of the time. You did it a bunch when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Canical. Because the faster the player can get back into the character frame, the better. Certainly practice doing so helps. Absolutely.
No, I think that's critical there, right?
Yep.
The relatively quick ability to go to the game frame, make meaning from a role or other mechanic, and then translate that into the character frame is a practice that becomes more automatic. Like many other things become more automatic the more you practice them.
Agreed.
I love that. Good stuff.
Dice Tales. It's hard to get this right in just comments. I'm going to do a video about it. I'd love to see it. I can't wait for it to come out. In fact, I may actually go ahead and do a video just to condense the definitions down and get them out there. I think that might be beneficial. So I might take the opportunity to do that. Hey, Hunter, likewise. Nice to see you and Adept Austin tackling 40 Mithras. Cool. Got some Mithras talk in the chat. Pursuant to my last comment, Brian, do you guys find your characters drift toward your own personality?
I think it's very difficult to not have aspects of your own psyche within the characters you play. I mean, we've discussed this before, right? We're talking about, we used it, I think when we discussed this last time, Bacon, we talked about things like Stanislavski or method acting, etc. Right? Reducing roll distance. Am I saying it correctly?
Yep.
Distance between character and player, right? Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think you're going to always have aspects of who you are in everything you do, like every actor does, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's not acting, I know. Don't lynch me for that, but
well, especially if you're not, if you're not taking on an affectation in your character speaking, if you're, not flourishing in a way that you normally wouldn't, like your behaviors, your verbal tics, all of your vernacular and your description of what your characters are doing, that's all you. So it's going to affect the presentation of the character, at least, if not the character, in some
No matter where you go, there you are.
Yeah, I mean, you're always aware of your primary frame, right?
Yes.
Sure.
And to the extent that everything else then is laminated to that, you can't help but filter things through that primary frame.
Yes. Let's say if you're well adjusted, you're always aware of your primary.
I'm trying to leave out the edge cases.
Gotcha.
Fair enough. Oh man, he's still talking to Nick. Here we go.
I found bits of myself in my characters, despite trying not to. I'm going to play more extreme characters and see what happens.
Yep.
See what happens.
It's
I
funny.
like. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, just give it a shot, see what happens. I think you're going to find that playing more extreme things as a means of trying to overcome your own personal elements to that character, you're still going to find that they dribble in there. But I say give it a shot. I mean, if nothing else, push yourself to try to play characters you're not used to, or characters that are uncomfortable, or characters that, try to access different parts of who you are as a person, so that you're not accessing the same part of yourself every time.
Yeah.
Dice Tales. Definitions are good. I agree. Mr. Max said long ago we need a good taxonomy for 40 role playing. That's always stuck with me. I agree with that as well. I think that any style that can provide an explanation for what they do and why they do it is going to be a successful style, because you are better equipped to explain to others your approach to play. You're better able to explain the reasoning behind why you do things a certain way. It's, well, if the goal is to reduce roll distance, then everything points toward reducing roll distance. So you want to choose a game that will allow you the flexibility to remain in character for as long as possible and as frequently as possible. You're going to want to make sure that you reduce, chatter around the table that's not in character chatter. So I agree with that statement. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in a little bit too, because I think this gets back to something I'm very passionate about, which is character creation, right? Because when you say bits of personality, if I can put on my pedantic hat for a minute, I would want to extrapolate that down. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about my goals? Are we talking about my moral or ethical code? Because I think that's when you can start to diverge from you personally. I think if I go, okay, here are the things that are important to me. I like liberty. I like self-sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. And then I want to play somebody who I want to control. I'm petty. And I start to name these things. That's how you can start to be away from who you are, at least as a moral being with agency. You can start to go, I'm going to play counter to the ethics that I hold in real life. And I'm going to conduct myself in a cowardice way. Or that's when I think it's cool. That's why you got to have that exercise. Who is this guy, and why is he the way he is, and what is it about him that I want to kind of embrace at the table that's very different from me and will be a challenge for me at the table, right? That's why I like that idea. That's the tear off your skin stuff. Like, what if I want to play a coward? What if I want to play a guy who ran away or is a backstabber? Or what if I, none of the things I'm in real life, I will say. No, but you catch my point, right? Like, you have to, that's why in defining your character, who your character is you're going to play during session 0, you go, okay, I know who this character is going to be. That's when you have the freedom to differentiate you from the character as much as possible. Now, in conversation, when the rubber meets the road, you're still going to be coming through that, even with that framework on top that you're trying to separate yourself from, you're still going to come through that as almost like an actor does. You still see the actor in that character, but sometimes you see less and less of them. Like, you don't think of Jared, that was his name, the guy who lost his life playing the Joker because he kind of lost his mind.
Oh,
Heath Ledger.
Thank you. You don't see Heath Ledger in the Joker. You go, wow, that's, even if you don't like that movie, you watch that performance and you go, dude, he is somebody else right now. And yeah, so
yeah,
I don't know.
That might be a really good place to end. I think we've gone on for about 2 hours now.
We have.
Sure.
I didn't even expect it to go this long, so I'm very pleased with the length. I think that chat is pretty much wrapped up into their own conversations with one another.
Cool.
And I got to get up early in the morning, so
yeah, me too.
That's where I am.
but it's not that late. It's not too bad.
No,
Good
no,
stuff.
I agree. It's not bad.
Yeah.
So
But
thank
that should-
you.
Sorry, real
everyone.
quick. That should be its own video. We got to talk about like character creation and the concepts of that, not just the stupid character sheet, but like who are you and how do you get there?
Motivation,
Yeah,
goals, things
Yeah,
like that.
man. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, completely agree.
sorry, your rap, Bacon. I'll step
No,
away.
you're good, man. You're good. I was just gonna say, hey, thanks for everyone for coming. I'm actually like pretty exhausted at the moment, so I don't have a lot to say. Just thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. This is a great conversation. Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
Thank you, Dean. This
Thank you.
far exceeded expectations, and
I'm glad to be here.
thank you, everyone.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad that there was a bunch of people here too. They had great things to say and questions to ask.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
And all you guys who listen to it live on Bacon's channel, if you want to watch it, go onto my channel and watch it. Give me a couple
True
of
and accurate. Go
There you
on in the
go.
background 5 times.
Cross promotion.
Anyway, this has been tons of fun. Thank you guys so much.
Indeed. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.